This is the Indian state of Andhra Pradesh, the 10th most populous in the country and the 7th largest, by the way. Most of the people here work in farming. They grow rice. But besides that, Andhra Pradesh accounts for 30% of India's fish production and makes up 35% of the country's total seafood exports. And this is the Polavaram project, aimed at solving the biggest dilemma and the biggest paradox of the state. Engineers and the government have been working on it for almost 85 years now. Originally, it was supposed to be finished by June 2020, but the deadline's already been pushed back at least twice. Still, despite countless obstacles, including nature's fury, resistance from neighboring states, missed deadlines, and even changes in government, the Polavaram project is getting closer to completion every day. What's this all about? Why is the project such a big deal, and what's so unique about it that'll blow everyone's mind? Let's figure it out. But first, I'm gonna make myself some coffee. Just an unobtrusive reminder to do something under the video if you forget to do it at the end of watching. Let's start with the paradox. Take a look at the map of India's drought-prone areas. There are plenty, of course, but we're interested in the state of Andhra Pradesh. Its entire southwestern part, mainly the Resettlement region, is one big arid zone. In 2023, Resettlement went through its worst drought in 15 years. The impact was especially severe in Unsalted County, where nearly 90% of farmland took a hit, and 49 out of 63 mandals were officially labeled as drought-stricken. All this not only caused economic hardship, but also led to a surge in mass migrations and complete despair among farmers. Just imagine this. Because of the drought, crops fail, leaving people without a livelihood. And when they try to sell their land and move away, they get next to nothing for it. In the end, they have no choice but to return, only to face another drought, another failed harvest, and so it goes, over and over again. Between 2000 and 2020, Andhra Pradesh suffered through 18 droughts. In fact, weather records going back to 1882 show that Anantapur district has had a long, grim history of droughts and water shortages, but in the past few decades, things have gotten downright critical. Over the past 30 years, croplands in the county have shrunk by 50% from 4,600 square miles to about 2,300 square miles, all because droughts no longer happen once every 3 years, but almost every year. And since 90% of the county's farming relies on rain rather than irrigation, this kind of weather just wipes it out. In the past 26 years, crops have failed at least 15 years due to drought. Oh, and also because of excessive rainfall. Wait, what? Yeah, that's the paradox. Floods and cyclones are the main natural disasters in the state of Andhra Pradesh, causing damage to property, infrastructure, and agriculture as a whole. For example, in September 2024, heavy rains caused severe damage in the states of Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, leading to widespread flooding and claiming 33 lives. These rains were caused by a land-based cyclone that drew moisture from the Arabian Sea and heat from the eastern parts of the country. The combination of these factors resulted in an astonishing amount of rainfall in Andhra Pradesh, 20.5 inches in just 24 hours. As a result, more than 27% of the annual rainfall fell on the state in just 2 days. Naturally, this caused severe flooding in many areas, and this happens all the time. I just started Googling, and I got hit by a massive wave of flood news. Different years, same state. Imagine the situation in this state. On one side, a drought, mostly affecting the southwest, and on the other side, floods in the northeast. This place really lacks balance. And that's when the Polavaram project comes into play. This is a multi-purpose irrigation project built on the Godavari River in the West Godavari and East Godavari districts of Andhra Pradesh. In short, it involves constructing a dam to address water shortages, boost agricultural productivity, and generate electricity. The plan is for the Polavaram project to develop 1,080,000 acres of irrigation potential. Moreover, the project will generate 960 megawatts of hydroelectric power, providing drinking water to 611 villages and divert 528 billion gallons of water to the Krishna River basin. The dam will also help manage the floodwaters of the Godavari River. That is, water will flow from overly wet regions to drier ones, and electricity will be a nice bonus. Naturally, it's a massive structure made up of several parts, each of which is huge too. The dam on the main riverbed, the concrete spillway with gates, the left and right connections for directing water from the reservoir into the left and right main canals, I don't even know where to start. I guess it's better to start with the part that's easiest to see, the spillway. The length of the dam is about 0.7 miles, the height of the supports is 177 feet, and the total number of radial gates is 48. It's a pretty impressive structure. The Polavaram spillway is designed to handle massive floods. They're even larger ones than usual, floods that might happen once in 1,000 years. With a capacity of 37 million gallons per second, Polavaram will even surpass the Three Gorges Dam in China, one of the largest dams in the world. It's been estimated that building this massive structure requires pouring 109 million cubic feet of concrete, 50,000 tons of steel, and 930,000 tons of cement. And all of this has to be done in an incredibly short time. In fact, the project has already set a world record. 1.1 million cubic feet of concrete was poured into the spillway. 2 other records were also set, one for the most concrete continuously poured in 24 hours, and another for the largest continuous concrete pour. Sounds the same, but still these are different records. But the Polavaram project is famous for more than just concrete. Here, they built a truly remarkable 827-foot fish ladder to make it easier for fish to move upstream. This ladder has 4 vents. The first and second were built at the crest level, and the other openings are at heights of 112 and 138 feet. This has led local media to call it the longest fish ladder in India. Engineers, by the way, claim that it's designed with the physiology and behavior of fish in mind. The fish will be able to move around freely inside even if the water level constantly changes. Building this thing was possible thanks to the help of the Central Research Institute of Inland Fisheries, which assisted in designing the structure. But let's go back to the spillway. Before starting any work, they had to dig a huge channel on the riverbank, and I mean just an incredibly huge one. It created a whole new waterway, the flow of which can be controlled with movable sluices before the water returns to the Godavari. Well, when the work is finished. As for the dam itself, its construction hasn't started yet, but it's known that it'll stretch across the river, roughly parallel to the spillway. It'll be made from a mix of compacted earth and stone rising up to 164 feet high. Engineers also report that the dam will sit on top of a concrete diaphragm wall built into the ground. Its job is to give the dam stability by the pressure of the water behind it, while also preventing leaks. But it seems if there's a plan in place and the work is moving so fast it's breaking records, why are the project deadlines constantly being pushed back? The truth is, there are several reasons. One of them is the severe flooding on the Godavari River in August 2020, which caused serious damage to the diaphragm wall of the dam. The diaphragm wall, made of a 5-foot thick concrete at a depth of 130 to 393 feet below the riverbed, is the first of its kind in irrigation projects in India. As I mentioned earlier, it's needed for the dam's stability, but it turned out the wall itself could use some. Massive floods caused erosion in 2 spots of the wall, covering an area of 2,150 square feet. The main reason for the damage was a mistake made by the contractor during construction. At one point, the fate of the entire Polavaram project hung by a thread. Judging by the comments of the Minister of Irrigation, Ambati Rambabu, he said, and I quote, "I don't know if the diaphragm wall has to be built again or if the project site has to be changed. I don't know what the experts would recommend. I don't even know if the project work could be continued on the damaged diaphragm wall." The minister also, as any politician would, blamed the previous government, claiming that when designing the spillway, their predecessors allegedly didn't take into account the power of floodwaters. In the end, the question was raised sharply. Should they repair the existing wall in the ground or build a new wall parallel to the first one? For a long time, the engineers and officials couldn't agree on this. Also, the state authorities simply didn't have the funds to do anything at all. Only in 2024 did things finally start moving after a group of international experts recommended building a new wall. Then the funds were found. But unfortunately, the problems aren't limited to the wall. A dam like this can only be built in a dry region. So 2 coffer dams were built above and below the spot where the new dam will go up. Their job is to keep water away from the construction site during the works, which is exactly what happened in 2020 and also in 2019, according to some reports. To be fair, though, back then the coffer dams were only half finished. but their construction's been completed since then. The lower one was completed in 2023 with work done around the clock to make up for the time lost due to the floods of 2019 and 2020. In the end, it turned out to be a structure 5,430 feet long and 103 feet high. By the way, the height was increased by 3 feet from the originally planned 100 feet, all because of the severe floods, but the ones that happened in 2022. The height of the upper Coffer Dam was also raised to 144 feet to withstand the new unexpected floods. About 123 million cubic feet of black soil, gravel, and stone chips were used for the construction and reinforcement of this Coffer Dam. In general, the builders did their best to make everything as high quality as possible. But this Coffer Dam issue definitely delayed the project. Plus, don't forget about the major floods 2 years in a row that disrupted work and damaged the unfinished structures. But let's take our minds off the problems for a moment and look to a bright future, the one where the dam is already finished. The engineers are confident once the construction is complete, it'll help create a new reservoir as well as direct water into the spillway on its way to the Bay of Bengal. But that's not the only route the water can take. A couple of giant channels will let water flow east to reservoirs located 112 miles away. Yes, to a place where water is especially needed, and to the west into the Krishna River, which I mentioned earlier. Remember when I said the project is almost 85 years old? I didn't bring that up for no reason. The first proposal for the project was made back in 1946, though some sources say it was actually in 1941. And if you're watching this video in 2025, the Polavaram project is already 84 years old. The first stone of the foundation was laid in 1980 by the chief minister at the time, Tanguturi Anjaya. However, the project soon got bogged down in bureaucracy as it required mass relocation, environmental concerns, and flooding in some areas. Finally, in 2004 to 2005, the chief minister of Andhra Pradesh, Rajasekhar Reddy, began pushing forward the Polavaram project. The plan was for it to move quickly, but unfortunately the minister died in September 2009, and the project was postponed once more. Meanwhile, the states of Odisha and Chhattisgarh filed a case with the Supreme Court against the Polavaram project. The reason for the lawsuit was straightforward and understandable, as many acres of land in both states would be flooded. Everything kept getting delayed, pushed back, and then delayed again, and it just dragged on even more. It wasn't until around 2014 that the work on the project actually began. To this day, over 70% of the work on the main dam, meaning the spillway and the channel, is completed, as well as 100% of the work on the diaphragm and the coffer dams. But of course, there's still a lot left to do. A lot. The longer this drags on, the more expensive the project gets. The initial cost set in 2004 has gone up by about 5 times by the time of the estimates in 2017 to 2018. But since then, the project's been delayed again. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's even more expensive now. And it'll keep getting more expensive until the work is finished. The main cause of the cost increase is the higher expenses for housing the people evacuated under the project. The number of evacuees is growing over time, which in turn pushes the cost even higher. Initially, the project aimed to relocate 44,570 families from 271 villages. But by 2014-2015, the number rose to 98,818 families, 80% of which are tribals. Now the number of families has grown to 106,000. Each of them is supposed to receive a cash compensation ranging from 680,000 to 1 million rupees, depending on their location. On top of that, they should be given new land and housing. It's an enormous task that requires enormous funds. Still, resettling people is absolutely necessary. The Godavari is one of the largest rivers in India, and it floods every monsoon season. At the same time, around 729 people per 0.4 square miles live in its vast river delta, almost twice the average population density in India. And this is in an area where the flood risk is really high. For example, one of the latest major floods occurred recently in the summer of 2024. At that time, the raging waters of the Godavari River flooded more than 420 villages, including about 200 tribal settlements. In the Chintor Mandal alone, 9,078 people, mostly tribal residents living along the Sabari and Godavari rivers, were evacuated to 66 relief camps set up by the administration. Many villages were cut off from nearby towns and suffered huge crop losses, not to mention the homes that were simply washed away. In just one district, 6,900 acres of rice fields were flooded, and another 91,000 acres were submerged. At least 112 miles of roads were partially damaged due to the flood. And that was just the beginning, because in 2022, the water level in the Godavari River was the highest in 16 years. Over 2 million people were affected, and the authorities relocated 69,746 residents of the impacted communities to 156 relief camps. Why am I telling you all this? Well, the dam will help deal with the floodwaters of the Godavari River, reducing risks for nearby communities. People won't have to be relocated every time there's a flood anymore, and they'll stop losing their homes, land, and livelihoods. All that's needed is for the Polavaram project to be completed, and of course for everything to work properly. But there are also some concerns. The Godavari River drying up, often during the dry months, is raising increasing concerns among environmentalists who say that one of the main reasons is the haphazard building of dams. In Maharashtra, the irrigation of sugarcane is one of the causes. In 2013, the water level in the river was the lowest in the district of Nizamabad, Telangana. This, in turn, affected fish growth, making life unbearable for the fishermen. The water level dropped so much that people could easily walk into the middle of the river. That's when scientists did a study that showed the delta was in more danger. Some ecologists even referred to the Polavaram project as another sign of disregard for the Godavari, since it's massive not just because of its size, but also due to the number of violations. Experts even call it pointless and politically driven, because the project raises a lot of questions, especially concerning its environmental impact. But no one seems to be in a hurry to answer them. The biggest news in the past few days is that we had some strong winds where I live, and somehow they managed to knock over my small trash can. The problem is the stuff inside the bag ended up inside my yard, but the bag itself is nowhere to be found. So yeah, if a little yellow bag landed at your place, sorry about that. The final is in 2027. As we've already figured out today, there's still a lot of work to do on the Polavaram project. However, in November 2024, a news report came out about a new statement from Andhra Pradesh's Chief Minister, Chandrababu Naidu. What did he say? Well, his speech was quite reassuring. The minister stated that the Polavaram project, which he described as the state's vital artery and foundation, would be finished by 2027 at any cost, despite all the financial difficulties. The minister called the project's completion a turning point for the state, and it's hard to argue with that given all the problems in Andhra Pradesh. If the southern state can pull off the Polavaram project successfully, droughts, floods, and hunger will be a thing of the past. The state was also promised extra funding to speed up construction, and we can only hope the project finally reaches the finish line. Get it done no matter what. There's actually a pretty good chance that the massive dam will be finished by 2027. See, the state government has told the contractors to bring in extra equipment to get that diaphragm wall and other work done. Officials insist that extending the deadline isn't on the table and are pushing hard to get the job wrapped up. So how exactly will they manage to finish on time? Well, it looks like the government has a plan. First off, and this is the most obvious part, the government changed the construction schedule for contractors so they could review it and get all the necessary resources in place. As they claim, unlike before, no delays will be allowed at any stage except for unforeseen natural disasters. Second, the authorities made it clear that payments will be made strictly based on completed work according to the schedule. No finished work, no paycheck. Not a bad incentive. And it looks like the plan is working. After getting final approval from the Central Water Commission in 2025, the State Irrigation Department started drilling for the diaphragm wall. It'll be 0.8 miles long and 5 feet thick, with construction expected to wrap up by December 2025. The project's chief engineer said the builders decided to bring in 2 more cutting machines to speed up the work following state government instructions. The current equipment is staying put, of course, but deadlines are tight, so extra help is needed. The first additional machine was supposed to arrive at the site by the end of January, and the second one is expected by March. Sinking villages. And even though all this news about the completion of construction sounds pretty optimistic, there's still going to be some issues. According to new data from 2024, about 8 villages in the Malkangiri area of Odisha state will end up underwater once the Polavaram project is finished. The government has estimated that around 1,005 families will be affected by flooding when the water level in Polavaram reaches 150 feet, plus about 1,600 acres of land in Odisha and 1,965 acres in Chhattisgarh are expected to go underwater since the area lies between the Sabari and Saleru rivers. But people won't have to deal with this on their own. The authorities have promised to take care of the flooded areas. The first way to tackle the problem is to build retaining walls and set up a proper drainage system to prevent damage. According to the plans, this structure on the Saleru River will stretch about 7.5 miles, while another wall on the Sabari River will be 11 miles long. That means the total length of the barrier will be 19 miles, and it should help protect the land and people from flooding. If things don't go as planned with the retaining walls, the government will compensate people who lost their homes. Basically, they should get help no matter what. Another project. While the Andhra Pradesh government is struggling to meet the deadlines for completing the Polavaram project on the river, Chief Minister Chandrababu Naidu has come up with another ambitious irrigation plan. The project's aimed at diverting the waters of the Godavari River into the Krishna River basin to irrigate the dry lands of Rayalaseema, provide drinking water to 8 million people, and water vast areas of farmland in this underdeveloped region. So what's been done on this project so far? Well, practically nothing. Some rough cost estimates have been made, and tenders will be announced soon. According to the plan, the project will be carried out in 3 phases. In the first phase, water will be diverted from the right canal of the Polavaram project into the Krishna River. In the second phase, a reservoir will be built in Palnadu district to store water. In the third phase, water will simply be taken from the reservoir for irrigation and drinking water supply. Sounds easy and simple? Yeah. But in reality, there are issues even at the planning stage. According to a representative of the State Department of Irrigation, the biggest challenge in the project is building a 17-mile tunnel through the dense Nalamala forest, which is a national tiger reserve. To avoid any impact on the forest and wildlife, the pipeline needs to go underground, so the tunnel's designed to bypass this area. What else do we know about the project? The water from the reservoir will be carried to the main regulating unit through a gravity-fed canal stretching 73 miles. There's no need to pump the water on its way from the reservoir to the Krishna River. Just increasing the capacity of the existing canals will do the job. That's why the right canal of Polavaram will simply be widened. Since the project is meant to divert floodwaters downstream from the Polavaram project without affecting other states, the government expects the approval process to be pretty straightforward. But as for when the project will start and finish, there's no update on that. First, India needs to wrap up the Polavaram Dam, and only then can it move on to anything else. You owe me a like. See you later.